Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers, and we have special guest, Ant Wright, at It's Ant Wright on Twitter, here to preview Purdue versus Michigan, a game where I think it's still a very, very big game, very, very important game. Probably lost a tiny bit of the appeal given, Purdue just lost to Ohio State, Michigan just lost to Minnesota last week, but regardless, still I would say a top four matchup within the Big Ten, and should be a very fun one. Matchup is Friday, January 24th. It is an 8 p.m. Eastern time tip on Fox. So should be a good matchup. I think both teams have looked very good, especially over the last bit. Ants, I'll throw it to you, just kind of where you think both of these teams are and kind of your thoughts, your generalized thoughts on them going into the game.
Yeah, man, it's this is going to be the best team that Michigan has played. It's going to be the biggest game that they've played. Even though they faced a whole bunch of high majors in the non-conference, those are a bunch of like quad twos, right? It was like playing like Iowa 6 times. You know what I mean? Yeah, they're high major, yeah, but like at the end of the day, I don't think any of those, maybe one or two, will end up in the NCAA tournament. So yeah, very easily the biggest game since the Wisconsin game, and just so had it that Wisconsin's 21 on the net right now. I mean, it's just so much that Wisconsin is the only team that hasn't been down by double digits to Michigan this year. So I do anticipate a decent game. I won't be shocked if this was a runaway either way. It's just one of those games because both teams have very good firepower. Both teams can really get it going. Michigan does bring a unique style of play to the Big Ten this season, and interesting matchups too. I do. I love like the game within the game. I love the matchups here. Not sure if you saw my very, very brief little like snippet on the Ohio State Purdue game, but that game was intriguing to me because the backcourt was like, okay, who do you have CJ Cox guard and who's this person going to guard? Because John Mobley isn't just some shooter. Like, he's fast. He is quick with the ball. Like, that's a cheat code. If you can shoot out to like 25, 26, and you got handles, and you're super fast, and you change speeds, you have a different dynamic. And he's playing alongside one of the better guards in the country, and Bruce Thornton, who's built like a running back. So they had some issues there. And then you're looking at Micah Parrish, and you saw what Painter did late, right? He went with like an offense-defense type of scheme, and he put Braden Smith out there with 2 freshmen, right? Because those are much better defenders, guys who can handle guys. So when it comes to Michigan, they just score. They score, and then they score some more, then they score some more. One thing that they will do is that they'll have lulls of scoring for about 3 to 4 minutes. And on top of that, they'll give away possessions. And that's where you see these big swings where they give up like 14-2, 16-3 runs over the course of just a few minutes. And that's kind of that's why they're not, it sounds crazy, but that's why they're not undefeated, is because of that. You're talking about they've lost 4 times, I think.
Yeah, all less by three or less points.
Yeah, so lost by 4. They lost 4 games, 1 by, I think 2 by 2, 1 by 1, then
1 by
the
3
overtime game. That's the buzzer beater from Dawson, right?
Yep.
So this team, and they dominated all 4 of those games. I mean, they were up by at least 11 in all 4 of those games. So, I mean, one thing about Purdue fans, if you're watching this game and Purdue gets down by 18, you guys can be up by 4 or 5 within 5 minutes. So don't fret, don't go off, just wait, because it'll probably happen.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting digging into Michigan's schedule and whatnot, because I've like watched Michigan this year, followed them, but not to the point where I really knew their schedule front and back like I know Purdue's. And looking through that, and you're like, man, their best wins are just Wisconsin, UCLA, and Northwestern. Not that Wisconsin and UCLA are chumps by any means, but there are two teams, Purdue and Michigan, that are very close in the metrics, right? Purdue is 10th in Ken Palm right now still. Michigan is 12th. I think Michigan comes in at around 12th in the net, I believe, too. I don't know. You probably updated that this morning, didn't you, Ant?
Yeah, Michigan is 12th on the net. Illinois is 8. Purdue's 13. Michigan State 16.
Right. So two teams that are really close in terms of the metrics, in terms of what it's showing us. But when you kind of look at who they played, Michigan kind of made hay playing a bunch of teams in that 20 to 40 range, and Purdue played a bunch of quad 1A teams throughout this season. So
yeah,
it's
Michigan
hard
to if you're looking at like the term net merchants, that's Michigan, where they beat the living hell out of a lot of bad teams and mid-level teams, and they scheduled very well. If you're going to schedule to get like a high net, this is the type of scheduling you want to have, where you don't have a lot of teams like the 300s, but you have those teams between like 1 and like 180 who you could beat by like 40 points. Because now it looks good. Because now you're beating a team in the top third of the net, even though you are positionally bigger than them at every position, and you could just overwhelm them. But yeah, they've been winning with incredible margin, and they lose with minimal margin, and the net right now is reading 4 losses by 5 points because they don't include overtime. So
I gotcha. Let's jump into some of the players a little bit for Purdue listeners who maybe haven't followed this Michigan team real closely. And I think you got to start in the front court with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, right? To me, that is unique. To me, Danny Wolf is a unicorn in college basketball. Just kind of talk to our listeners a little bit about what makes that pair so special.
It's hard because not only is Vlad right now, he's, Purdue fans not trying to hear this, but Vlad has been the best big in league play this year. He's leading the Big Ten in scoring, and I'm talking about Big Ten games only here. He's leading them in scoring. Rebounds the ball decently well. He's also shooting threes now, which is kind of insane. Where you kind of have to be there on pick and pops. So he's shooting about 1 a game, roughly. I think last game he shot 6. But he's been able to finish well around the basket. He's had 2 games of 30+ points. This will be a big game for TKR, someone who defensively hasn't been great this year. This is going to have to be one of his better rim protecting days. And if he can get Vlad in foul trouble, similar to how Michigan State kind of got into Kasparis, Yakajonas. You're going to be feeling real good about things if Vlad is able to sit. When Vlad and Danny are on the floor at the same time, their plus minus is insane this season. So once you can get into the bench, that's going to be the weakness. I think Michigan goes about 7 deep that I fully trust. About 7 deep. Once they start going to the 8th and 9th guy, it can get shaky. When I talked about before how they can give up these big runs and these big leads, that happens because they're playing their 8th and 9th guy usually. That doesn't happen with their starting group or their 6th or 7th man, but it can get ugly fast. But Danny Wolf, you're talking about someone who's 6'11", 7 feet tall, can shoot 40% from 3. They lost to Minnesota, but when is the last time you saw 2 players of that caliber go back and forth like that in that second half? Danny Wolf versus Dawson Garcia, like I watched it the other day, just from a basketball fan standpoint. You just don't see that because usually you have like, okay, I'm going to go against your best perimeter defender, and then you're going to go against mine. No, it was Dawson versus Danny on both ends. There was no ducking, no dodging. They were going at it. I love that competition. But Danny and Vlad, they have like a good pick and roll game going, and it's tough because we've seen them adjust over several games, and they've been guarded 10, 12, 13 different times. How they're guarding pick and rolls, whether they're getting X out of the back, whether they're going to switch it, whether they're going to go over, whether they're going to go under, whether they're going to not switch, whether you're just going to jam, if you're going to trap. They've tried so many different things, but like that's going to be focus number one. It's going to be a big game for Cam Heidi. It's going to be a big game for First as well. Like you got to be able to move your feet and do it without fouling. And then you have guards. The guards aren't slouches. Namari Burnett has been shooting the leather off the basketball, and he's able to get to the basket. Very, very athletic. Trey Donaldson is he's a lot of fun to watch. He's someone who also can really shoot the ball, can get to that third level. Roddy Gale is more of a roller coaster. When Roddy Gale is able to be the good Roddy, he's a 3-level guy where he's able to put the ball on the deck, get to the basket, play around the rim. And if it's a Purdue team who's been lacking with their rim protection, Roddy should feast around the paint. The big thing about him is you have to keep him outside of 12 feet for him to not be as effective. But then off the bench, you got Cheddar. We're really good big who can play the 4 or the 5, can shoot the ball. Reuben Jones is a good defender, not so much a guy on offense. And then from there, you like Sam Walters, 6'10" shooter. Justin Pippen, they'll go to him as a guard. But it's really those top 7 guys who are going to have to be the ones who carry this team. Sorry if I talk too much, but.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, no, you're good. Like, and so you went through the roster, and like, I think what makes the Wolf Golden pick and roll so good is that obviously you have 7-foot Danny Wolf, who essentially is a guard, right? He can see over everybody, he can shoot, he can pass, he can drive, he can do all that. But it's not that it's just him. Golden, I don't know if there's many bigs in the country that are able to catch on the roll like him and stay balanced and finish at the rim. So just those two by themselves, that's already an elite pairing. And then you surround him with shooters or like somebody like Gale, who's a very good cutter. Donaldson, obviously, he's had games where, the UCLA game, he basically it felt like he was Steph Curry for the game. Namari Burnett, like you said, Namari Burnett's, I think, 4th in the country in effective field goal percentage. Like, he can do a bit of everything. Like, it's really stood out that, yes, Danny Wolf and Golden are like elite at what they do, and that's the start of it, but it's hard to help. And I'm writing an article, and so I watched every Danny Wolf pick and roll, and basically to summarize, and I categorized it kind of by like different defensive coverages, drop, hedge, switch, stuff like that. It hasn't mattered. Like, Danny Wolf just picks whatever he wants apart. Like, I'm looking at the points per possession, and like, yes, there's differences, but even the worst one is still like 1.15 points per possession, and like, that's insane. A really, really good mark for pick and roll.
It's absolutely insane.
Exactly. And so it's
insane. The synergy stuff, like for him to have those numbers in ball screen action plus passing at 7 feet tall is nuts. It looks silly because you see all the other guys around him, they're all like 6'2". And then there's like Danny, and it's like, and it's not like, it is not like, oh, it looks good because there's like, 11 possessions of it. No, there's like hundreds. There's like, it's like all the time that he's doing this.
Like everybody in the country, if you run 5 pick and rolls per game, that's including passes per synergy. So 5 pick and rolls, including passes. Danny Wolf's, I think, the 11th most efficient player in the country out of that. And all 10 players ahead of him, the tallest player is 6'3".
Yeah.
It's right. Like it's, we keep harping on it, but it is really just so unique because teams you don't guard that. And so now your 4s and your 5s are put into actions that they're not used to guarding and put in spots that they're not used to, being able to have to kind of execute with. I am very interested to see how Purdue goes about defending it.
And you can't really mimic it either. You can't practice it. Like you can't say, hey, Will, you and Raleigh. Okay, Raleigh, you're Vlad. Will, you're Danny. I need you to come off this pick and roll and attack. If he's out there killing, now Matt Painter's like, okay, Will, you're starting at the 4, and we're gonna run pick and roll with you and TKR all game. Like it's so hard to mimic because of the sheer size that you are dealing with. And you don't really you're not going to get used to it until like midway through the first half, and then you still have issues guarding it because there's different schemes that you have to use. And these are 4s guarding pick and roll. These aren't guards who guard pick and roll. Braden Smith has guarded a million pick and rolls. CJ Cox has guarded a million pick and rolls all throughout high school. So is Jakari, right? Colvin has, Caleb First has to guard a pick and roll right now. Like it's a very different responsibility, and you're gonna have to do it at the highest level against an NBA prospect, right? And so it's a very different dynamic, and it's almost like you kind of deal with it as it goes. And then you try to let others try to beat you because he's not only spraying the Vlad, like you said, you're surrounded by shooters. He's spraying it to anyone who's open.
Yeah. And I mean, we've thrown a lot of superlatives towards Danny and Vlad here and well-deserving, and 2 guys who are definitely going to be on all big teams. And quite frankly, both might end up on the first team if things break right at the end of the season. But the one thing, if we do want to nitpick a little bit, that they can do is turn the ball over. And Danny Wolf's averaging 3.8 a game. Vlad's averaging 1.9 a game. So 5.7 turnovers a game between the 2 of them. And in some of those runs where teams have come back, I think it's been turnovers that have got Michigan in trouble. As a team, they're averaging 14.6 a game. I know, Joe, just as we've gone through these different teams over the last, 5 weeks or whatever, that's one of the higher numbers I remember seeing in terms of total team turnovers. I do think just with Caleb's athleticism and mobility at 6'10", that it will be interesting to see him matched up a couple of games ago against Great Osabar, who is not Danny Wolf in terms of mobility or ball handling or anything like that, but he forces 4 turnovers against him in that game. So I am really interested in watching that matchup. But then, of course, you've got 6'9" TKR trying to guard Vlad. But Purdue has trended now 7 out of the last 8 games. They have forced teams over their season average on turnovers. And in a lot of those games, it's been +4, +5 over their season average on turnovers. Joe, I want to throw this to you real quick, Joe. How do you see Matt Painter trying to match up and defend that pick and roll? Joe, did you hear me?
It was cutting in and out for me. I'm going to be honest.
Okay. You did get a little fuzzy there for a second. I basically just said, how do you see Painter trying to match up defensively against that pick and roll with Caleb and TKR?
I think at this point, right, we've gone over it. Wolf can kind of pick apart everything. The one thing that stood out, especially with First having the mobility and some size with him, I think I am more concerned about Golden just feasting against TKR. And so, again, Wolf can knock down pull-ups. It's not like this isn't just like a simple, force Wolf to shoot pull-ups and you win, because he can burn you there too. But I think, my guess would be it's either just a hard trap, which I don't expect to happen. I think it's just going under. I think it's jamming Golden and not letting him really be a roller, and it's going under and forcing Wolf to try to be a pull-up shooter. Now he can still drive and take advantage of that space and get to the rim. But if I were to guess, that would be my guess, is you put First on Wolf, you jam Golden on the roll, or try to, and you have first go under and just try to figure it out from there. Because then you, in theory, shouldn't have to send as much help. I know Purdue has been a defense, especially over the past month, that does send a lot of help. So they still might do that, especially off of a guy like Gale. I don't know if it works, but that's my guess.
Yeah, that's going to be tough because when you're over helping, you tend to take your eyes away from who you're guarding. And Michigan's been really good this year at cutting, especially off of like Wolf. That's Namari's done a good job at cutting, and Gale has done a good job at cutting. Then if everybody's cutting and then they go, oh crap, and they run to the basket, now you have Trey Donaldson for like a wide open three, or if like Trey cuts, you have Namari for a wide open three. I'm going to be curious to see how much Braden is going to be center fielding this game, because he's gotten a lot of really good steals this year when he's able to guard certain guys and kind of sneak off of them. He'll get more opportunity when like Reuben Jones checks in. But one thing is that Braden is really big on, he watches a lot of film, I could tell. And a lot of sets that these teams run, he'll be able, like, he could watch one play 5 times and he'll be like, okay, this guy does this guy does that. If we're at this point of the play, I'm going to go for this, right? Michigan doesn't really run a lot of sets. Everything is like read and react. So like that's the part where they actually run, like, to my chagrin, I wish they ran a little bit more sets, which I think would help with the turnovers. But a lot of their stuff is read and react, and that's kind of why you see them be able to put up crazy numbers. But that's another reason why their turnovers are so high, because you don't know every cut on this next play, right? You're just, okay, he's doing this, okay, I'm doing this. It's just flowing and changing continuously based off of what you're doing, based on what the defense is doing, and based on what your teammates are doing.
Joe, on those other 3, the guards, wings, how do you see Purdue matching up? Is CJ being a jammer on Trey, and then Braden and Fletch on the other 2, or do you think because of the size, that's how you see it? I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think CJ starts on Trey if he's bringing up the ball, jam him full court like they normally do. Because, right, Michigan is a team that I don't know if they're the fastest offense in the Big Ten, but they're right up at the top if they're not number 1. So jamming Trey, especially when he brings up the ball, I don't know if they'll do that with like first when Wolf brings it up, but that would be my guess. And then you just have, right, I don't know. Lawyer, I don't know if it's Lawyer on Gale and Smith on Burnett or switched. Now Purdue also just switched those guard-to-guard actions off ball, so like I don't know if it's too big of a concern whichever way it goes. But that's kind of my thought there. And you want to put Braden in a spot, like Ant said, where he can try to be a bit more help and kind of get in those lanes, because that's where Braden has gotten a lot of those steals. But yeah, I would expect CJ on Trey, and then the other 2 just to kind of match up with however it falls.
And as you look at this Michigan team from a defensive standpoint, where do you see gaps where Purdue can attack and kind of make hay against this Michigan team offensively?
Like, they're not awesome when it comes to defense. They're pretty standard. What does help them is they do have a lot of athleticism, and they do have, it's like Vlad will do a good job blocking shots. Wolf, being the 4, is also, he does a great job at blocking shots, rim protecting as well. Namari Burnett has been a very good defender. Reuben Jones has been a very good defender. Trey Donaldson has also been a very good defender. A lot of one-on-one stuff where they force a lot of tough shots. And then tough shots are just as good as turnovers, right? Because then you rebound the ball and then you're gone. Now you're in your element, right? And then now you got this crazy back and forth going. and they're just banking on their back and forth is going to be better than your back and forth. That's why they're okay giving up 15 if they can score 30. You know what I mean? So it's not some like super stout defense, but it's a defense that will put you in some precarious situations. They're good at closing out. They're good at really wanting you to just take tough shots. Then if you're crashing with a whole bunch of guys, they're gonna flip the court and just run out instantly. So yeah.
Joe,
Sorry, I'm
anything
trying
to
to find the page.
Yeah, I'll say I think one thing to note for Purdue fans is like Michigan will switch basically everything off ball. Golden involvement is the one. If whoever's at the 5 is kind of the one area where they maybe don't switch. So like a lot of those pin downs and zoom actions and things like that, where I think Purdue fans call for them to be called more for, like, especially in a game like Ohio State, right, where it's like, hey, they only put up 9 threes. Why don't you just call more stuff? It's not quite that simple, and it's going to be the same thing against this Michigan team, where it's great to put teams in those actions, but Michigan is just going to be like, hey, we just switch your 4 off-ball screens and you gain nothing. So now we're just back at square one, and that's where I expect to see, again, a lot more pick and rolls and just kind of continue there. I had one question for Ant, and I'm curious what his thoughts are on this. Is it Golden on TKR and Wolf on first, or are you putting Wolf?
Yeah.
Okay. And just involving Golden, because knowing that TKR is going to be the one setting the screens, and then Wolf is the secondary rim protector.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then for the pace earlier, it's Illinois, Iowa, Michigan.
Okay.
In terms of pace.
Gotcha.
But they're all in the top 40 nationally. Yeah. Which is crazy for the Big Ten. There's 4 teams in the top 40 in the league, which is nuts.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting because as Purdue's turned people over more, their pace has picked up some too. But you kind of wonder if this is a game where Painter really wants them to try to slow things down. But then again, there's a decent probability that Purdue gets a decent amount of turnovers in this game. So they may still try to get out and go, obviously, when they have those opportunities. Yeah. But as you know, we're looking at the end of that Oregon game coming into this week and thinking like, hey, like Purdue's got a good chance to end January undefeated in the Big Ten. And I hope they don't overlook Ohio State. But if they can win this Michigan matchup, things are looking really, really good for them. And then, of course, they kind of take their foot off the pedal against Ohio State. A couple guys get super hot from outside, and all of a sudden that game flips, and they lose that game. So I think Friday is going to have Purdue's 100% full attention. Obviously, just knowing what they need for the Big Ten and taking care of home court advantage. You got any predictions for us here, Ant, about what's going to happen Friday? Or I don't know. Maybe you have a deal with somebody where you can only give predictions on certain shows. I don't know.
No, man. No, I mean, I don't really like predictions because I kind of like to just stay in the moment. It's it's one of those things where like just don't be shocked if Purdue is down by a lot. But don't be shocked if they come back and then they're up by like several possessions. Like it's the weirdest team that I've ever seen in my life. And I mean that from I don't know. It's the weirdest team, man. Like they'll go from like literally looking like the best team in the country to looking like those Corey Sanders Rutgers teams from like 2015 within like 6 minutes. It's truly amazing.
I saw you put a tweet out that was like 1 minute they look like the 2016 Golden State Warriors and the next minute the 2024 Chicago White Sox or something like that.
Yeah, I said 2017 Warriors, 2024 White Sox, where it's just a roller coaster. And I'm used to it now, and it's just one of those things. Like, it is what it is. Then I'm like, this could very easily bite them in the NCAA tournament where they do this, but you mess around and you end the game. That's it. Like, there's no get back in a couple days, right? So they're gonna have to fix that at some point. We'll see if it's going to be in this game, but you know what? This is going to be their toughest game. What do you think the spread is? Like 4.5?
Yeah,
Purdue?
3.5, something like that.
Yeah,
Somewhere
I was gonna
around
say-
there.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. And that's for a Michigan team who I haven't seen them overwhelmed by anyone yet this year. Like I said, Wisconsin was the only team, and that was the game that kind of birthed the Area 51, right? The Vlad Golden, Danny Wolf pick and roll scheme. Like, that was the game that started it because Michigan was struggling scoring the ball. And they went to that. And next thing you know, everybody in the country is like, what the hell just happened? Right? So they haven't really had – this sounds silly because they've lost plenty since then by a little bit, but there hasn't been a game where they haven't dominated at some point where you're just like, these two teams don't belong on the same court. I haven't seen that this year since that game. And this feels like one of those games that, like, Michigan needs to get punched in the mouth a bit to get better. And there's going to be no better team to face than a team coming off a loss to Ohio State where Micah Parrish just goes nuts, right? He turns into Kelly Oubre and just destroys everything in his wake. But yeah, man, it's I'm enjoying the league this year. I'm really enjoying the league this year. Very, very seldomly I get to I'm like, I see a game listed and I'm like, I don't want to watch that. Right? Like, every game is something. Even the Washington Oregon game, I was like, I don't want to watch this. Then I check my phone and it's like a one possession game in the second half. I'm like, shit, I gotta turn this on. Right? So I'm super excited about it. I'm really, really excited about this game for multiple reasons. I want to see how Braden Smith responds to his game. I want to see how Fletcher Lawyer responds to being taken out, where Painter's trusting freshmen over him to get the job done. I want to see TKR get back to making free throws, right? You go from what he did, and then next thing you know, he's like perfect from the line. Then he does what he did. Was that last night? I think it was last night, right? Yeah, last night. And then he's like missing the front ends of all this. So it's like, you want to see TKR get that consistency back. I'm still waiting for Miles Colvin and Cam Heide to wake up, man. I'm still waiting for them to make that leap that we all expected. Now, we are end of January where you're like, you are who you are at this point. But still, I think there's something there. But this game is going to come down to the big three. It's going to come down to Braden playing like Big Ten Player of the Year. It's going to come down to Fletcher hitting shots. He may need to draw a couple charges against Roddy Gale so Michigan can get into their bench. And TKR and Vlad. If TKR and Vlad can kind of negate themselves, like cross each other out, right? Then I think Purdue's chances grow even more. But I'm super excited about. There's such great matchups all over the place, honestly.
Yeah, Friday night game at Mackey against Michigan. Purdue crowd is always super hyped for those Michigan games, and with it being a Friday night game, Expect that place to be absolutely packed to the gills and to be rocking. One of my favorite games that I ever watched at Mackey was Purdue and Michigan in 17-18. And I think that game went into the 90s and not going to overtime. The shot making was just absolutely ridiculous. It was one of my favorite environments that I was ever in. I think Vince Edwards, not Carson, I think Vince goes for like 30 in that game. Just a crazy back and forth. So I'm super excited to see this game. I don't have a lot much more on the game itself. I did want to ask Joe and you, Ant, one question if you have time for one more question, Ant.
Yeah, man. We're all good. The baby's asleep.
Right.
Walker's watching TV. We're all good.
So I know you and I have a shared love for a guy who's not getting much pub in the Big Ten that plays up at Wisconsin, but this got me thinking a little bit.
Tom Blackwell, let's go.
Yep. But who else in the Big Ten is not getting enough love or enough attention in terms of being a potential all Big Ten player? So that's a question to both of you.
Joe, do you want to go first? And then because I've got a few names. Go ahead.
So this is just players that immediately pop into my head when that question gets asked. Nate Biddle, he might be finally getting the respect. I don't know if he makes all Big Ten, but he is somebody that I think should at least be in conversations. Tyler Bilodeau, and I know UCLA's been up and down, which kind of makes it, but he's been the one somewhat consistent force for that team. I don't know his exact averages, but he's another player that immediately pops in my head of like, hey, he should probably be getting a little bit more respect than what he is. Like those are the immediate two. There's also like the Bryce Williams and Brooks Barnhizer, where I think they're getting enough respect probably now, but for a bit there it was like, hey, no, like these are dudes that should absolutely make the all Big Ten teams. I think those two are finally probably getting that respect. But I do probably just want to shout them out. Desmond Claude, if he keeps up what he's been doing, like he absolutely should also make it.
You gonna list all the names before Ant gets to give his?
I was running through anything that popped in my head, and those.
Bro, it's all good. I love
that's my deserves more respect team. I put up 5.
I love this. I'm getting chills, bro. I love talking Big Ten, bro. I love it. This is excellent. It's better than going to the bar. I'll say this. There's a couple. I'm gonna name 2 that he didn't mention. One is going to be Ace Bailey. What he's been doing in conference, I'm not sure if you guys. He is going nuts.
He's turned a corner. He's turned
right
a big
now.
Corner.
Like he's going nuts, and it's, you know what, man, it's been so impressive. I sent a message to I'm in an NBA draft chat, bunch of nerds, like straight up nerds. I'm talking like super European last name type of nerds. Here's what I said, because I'm in there because like they keep me up to date of like, hey, what's what, who's doing this, who's doing that. This is what I sent today at 11:21. I said, I am back on the Ace Bailey train, and it had nothing to do with his game. I said, I didn't know he had this level of tenacity, competitiveness, great attitude, and motor. Such a great teammate. Like these are little things that you could just see in the huddle, in between whistles, and just seeing his mannerisms. It doesn't matter if he could miss his next 6, 7. It doesn't change his energy. And for him to be, he doesn't turn 19 till August.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, bro, right now in Big Ten play, I believe he's like, I have to bring this up, but I think he's like second in scoring. He's up there in rebounding too. Where like he's just doing silly things, and I am all aboard. Yeah, he is second in scoring, 20.8 per game. He is 4th in rebounding, and this is one that I love. 4th in blocks. 4th in blocks. So, like, that dude is just doing everything for Rutgers to get them going. Dylan has been sick, sprained his ankle, been a bit inconsistent, but Ace Bailey is the reason why they're 2-1 over their last 3. And they had a shot against Penn State, too. I think if Dylan had just an average game, I think they win that game as well. And they won 3 in a row. That's my one. Second, Jeremy Fears for Michigan State. He's been controlling the game on a level that I didn't think was possible for someone like him who came off a gunshot wound last year, medical red-shirted, and Izzo went all in on him. I thought that was a really risky play. I thought he should have went out and got like an upperclassman that could, continue to push him in practice and do all those things and be a type of insurance. But him defensively and controlling the game, I think he's right behind Braden when it comes to assists per game. He's the reason why Michigan State won that game. I think he's second. He's second in the Big Ten in assists, putting up 9 and 7, 40% from 3. I mean, he's just been like the general for Michigan State. Numbers aren't sexy outside of assists, but just watching games and watching how he's able to manipulate the opposing team on both ends has been one of like the bigger shockers to me, honestly, this season. But, Jeremy Fears and Ace Bailey, for sure. Those have been guys.
Can I add in one more name?
Go ahead.
Am I allowed to? Jacoby Gillespie for Maryland. He has become to me I would say he's probably been the best player this season for Maryland overall. I think he's really started becoming more and more consistent and just like kind of the stabilizing force, especially amidst, Derek Queen has been up and down. Julian Reese is who he is. Maryland might have to get a couple big wins still at some point, but Gillespie's another guy that I think like he's been awesome over the past probably since the turn of the calendar.
I
love it.
Yeah, they are.
I love it.
Well, the net merchant kings over there.
Yeah.
Beating a million points. They should have paid them double as they left.
Gotcha. I wanted to bring that question up because Joe and I both have been on the Blackwell train from very early on, and I just don't feel like enough people speak his name at the level that it should be spoken for. And starting to hear it a little bit more from more people because he's just been so impressive lately. But I think he's just a complete player that does well at all facets of the game. And really appreciated you coming on and spending some time with us as we preview this Michigan game. You want to let people know where they can see you do your work and find you on social media?
Yeah, Ant Wright. It's Ant Wright. If you're listening to me, like a 50% chance you have me blocked. I don't even care. Yeah, YouTube, anywhere it's Ant Wright. You'll see the shield, and then kind of just go from there.
You're doing some Field of 68 work this year too, right?
Yeah, I'm on After Dark, which has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun on there, and yeah, hope to be on there somewhere. I should be on there. I'm on there on Friday, 24th, right? Yeah, so I'll be on there after the Michigan Purdue game. So yeah, nice. Catch me on there on Friday.
Perfect, Joe.
Shout out John Blackwell. He's one of my 3 non-negotiables for Big Ten, for all Big Ten and Big Ten Player of the Year, Dark Horse. Vlad, him, and Smith.
Love it.
Non-negotiables.
Joe, I'll let you sign us off. Guys, watch Ant Wright on Field of 68 on Friday, but only after you sign off of our post-game show. Joe, go ahead and send us away.
Yeah, so appreciate Ant coming on Friday. Big time matchup against Michigan, 8 p.m. Eastern time tip on Fox. It is the Fox primetime game. We will be live pretty much right after the final buzzer. So make sure to like, subscribe. If you turn on bell notifications, you'll get notified as soon as we do go live, breaking down everything from the Purdue-Michigan game. Have previews up for every single Purdue game, post-game shows for every single Purdue game. So appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you all then.